Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Comic Book Trove, back today with another Omnibus review, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Incredible Hulk Omnibus Volume 2. Some more classic Hulk material in here from the late 60s, just moving into the early 70s. A really cool book to have because the first volume of this was one that for a long time it seemed like, it was one that maybe wouldn't be reprinted, and it certainly didn't seem likely at one stage that there'd be any further volumes of that because the first printing of the first volume took a long time to sell out. Didn't really have particularly good sales figures from all accounts. So really cool that we've not only had a reprint of that first volume, but now, as of November 2023, when this came out, we've got a second volume of it as well. And fingers crossed, there are more volumes still to come. Because I like all this. Classic Hulk is pretty fun stuff. Not the very best stuff from this era, I'll say that. But as we move into the 70s, which this book starts to do, I think the Hulk became a better series than how it started out. So we see elements of it becoming a more consistent series in here. Before we dive into the book and actually take a look at some of that stuff, let's just briefly take a look at the dust jacket here. This was the DM variant. Absolutely iconic Hulk cover from the great Jim Steranko. This is just one of those amazing covers that, to this day, you can see Marvel merchandise, like t-shirts, anything else you might find, and it's, there's still examples of this being used. It just is absolutely one of the all-time great Hulk covers. I really like that one, so no brainer for me. I felt I had to go with that option, but the other option was pretty cool too. On the back, you've got, as always, the cover gallery of what you get in here. Always the case with these kind of classic era omnibuses. Plenty of Hulk covers there, you'll see. And in this omnibus then, we've got Incredible Hulk issues 103 to 134 and Annual 1. So a good chunk of stuff in there. Moving well into the Incredible Hulk solo series at this point. And as I say, a third volume would be very welcome as and when that may happen. On the omnibus itself then, a relatively plain design. Again, pretty much the standard way that these are made up for these classic era omnibuses. We've got the Hulk logo there. On the spine, you get your credits, your creator credits, and a little image of the Hulk. And then on the back, you get this Hulk image. Pretty cool stuff. So let's dive in and talk a bit about this then. So as always, this is not going to be a completely comprehensive review where I go through it issue by issue and discuss absolutely everything at length. But I want to just show it off, give you a good idea of what this book's like, and maybe help you make your mind up as to whether or not it's something you feel like picking up. But I'll say that if you did enjoy, to any extent, the first volume, then I definitely would recommend this, because all in all, I think this is sort of stronger material than you get in that first volume. So if you're a fan of kind of classic Marvel, that late Silver, early Bronze Age, which we've got here, can't really go wrong with this. I praised the Steranko cover, but you know what? One of my other all-time favourite Hulk covers is actually collected in this book as well, and this is an image from it. A really great Hulk pose there. Marie Severin, the artist who did that, and obviously that was used as well as a kind of reference and homage for that first classic image of the Immortal Hulk as well. So definitely one of the all-time great Hulk images there, classic stuff. And then we got the credits page as always. So we see the kind of final issues of the series that Stan Lee wrote before he moved on. Roy Thomas came on to replace him, as he often did on many series back in the day. Roy Thomas was kind of the protege of Stan Lee, and in many cases the second main writer who took over a lot of those 60s era Marvel comics. In terms of pencilers then, Marie Severin, she is involved here. The first few issues are penciled by her. And then it's going to be Herb Trimpe, who does a lot of this stuff. So issues 106 to 134, as you see here, all done by him. He had a long run on this series, and there's a couple of introductions here written by him that he did originally for Marvel Masterwork collections of this material in previous years. The credits page then, the contents page I mean, which breaks it all down issue by issue. So as I say, we're going from late 60s into early 70s, just creeping into the 70s really. And, if we get a third volume, that will start to move well into the Bronze Age era of Hulk. Here's an introduction then by Herb Trimpe. I mean, I've heard it pronounced Trimpe or Trimpy, by the way, so I'm going with Trimpe. I've always pronounced it like that. If I'm wrong, but I'm sure somebody would correct me if that's the case. Anyway, so then we move in and start off with things with issue 103. And back when I did my review of Volume 1, and something that I'd recommend checking out if you're interested in that, of course, I talked a lot about how in those early issues of Hulk, it was such an inconsistent series. It really was, where it's like they couldn't quite make their minds up as to what kind of this character was all about. They changed their minds a lot about what it was that triggered the transformation between Banner and Hulk and vice versa. And then you had the changing personalities of the Hulk. You know, sometimes he'd be quite intelligent, sometimes he's like brutish and primitive. By this point, they've kind of settled in to, I guess, what is probably the most well-known and classic version of the Hulk that probably comes to people's minds first and foremost in most cases. And this is kind of the classic kind of savage Hulk, Hulk smash Hulk. At this point, it's pretty well established that the transformation is triggered by emotion, specifically anger and stress. Anything that kind of gets his heart rate increased is what will make Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk. He'll then go off and cause some destruction, usually not on purpose. The Hulk is the kind of classic misunderstood beast character kind of thing, misunderstood monster, kind of classic Frankenstein monster sort of thing that he's based on. But this is pretty cool. You know, a lot of this stuff is really fun. I quite like the artwork in here. Herb Trimpe, not my favourite artist by any means, but it's definitely a classic era of Hulk with a pretty distinctive look to it. And you get some pretty wild and fun adventures that are very much in the style of the time here. So, you know, we're seeing the issue here where Hulk goes down to the Savage Land, meets up with Kazar. I was, again, another name that I hear people pronounce differently. I've always said Kazar. I think technically it is Kazar, but anyway, it's by the by. Yeah, so plenty of fun adventures in here. So it's something that I think you do have to have an appreciation of this era of comics to enjoy. If you don't particularly like, you know, that sort of late 60s, early 70s era, that transition from Silver to Bronze Age, I don't know if I'd recommend this as being something to pick up, you know, and go straight into blind. But if you know that you like this era of comics, then absolutely something well worth picking up. There's no issues in terms of the build of the book with the binding or anything like that. I've not noticed any errors. There was quite famously a printing error in the first volume where certain pages in one of the issues were miscoloured. I've not noticed anything like that in this book as I flicked through it previously, so I don't think there should be any concern there. But in terms of kind of plot and what's going on in here, then just bringing it back to the content, we've got the same kind of key supporting characters featuring in here. So as well as obviously Banner and the Hulk, you've got General Thunderbolt Ross persisting as a main antagonist, along with his kind of ally in the army in his war against the Hulk, General Talbot, or is it Captain Talbot, Colonel Talbot? I forget his exact rank. But anyway, yeah, he's out to get the Hulk, perhaps even more so than General Ross is at times. Betty Ross, you know, she's consistently appearing through here as the love interest of Bruce Banner. Villains, again, including the leader, who we see here. And then plenty of other much more forgettable characters. Random characters you don't necessarily remember, although here is an issue with the Absorbing Man, who's a pretty cool character. He has a rubbish name, but he's one of those characters who's sort of persisted and actually has a pretty cool power. And he's, you know, long been a villain of the Hulk, as you can see from the fact he appears in these early comics. You know, other members of the Avengers and the Fantastic Four make guest appearances throughout here. You know, this is obviously, you know, the way that the Marvel Universe works. You have characters guest appearing all over the place in other people's comics. And that was no different with this run. And all in all, it's just another good collection of Hulk stuff. You know, I was very much keen for this to come out. When it was announced, I was generally really pleased because, you know, as I say, I didn't feel like there had been a large chance of a second volume of this really happening. So when it did, great news. Glad to have it in the collection. Looking forward to, as I say, a possible third volume, because as I said previously, I think as Hulk moves further into the 70s, it becomes kind of better and better, and eventually, obviously, you get to the Bill Mantlo run, which would be great to see that collected at some point. That would be on a kind of most wanted Hulk omnibuses from me, no doubt. There's a pretty good section of extras in here. This unbelievable cover to issue 105, the original art by Maurice Severin and inker Frank Giacoia. I just love that. You know, for a long time, that was the Hulk cover, and I suppose to an extent still really is the Hulk cover that first comes to mind for me when I think about the Hulk. I remember I had a t-shirt with that on at some point. I think I had like a mug with it on. I've had a few things over the years that all use that image. Just goes to show you it is a great piece of Hulk artwork. Other stuff in here, though, obviously lots of other original artwork and sketches from different artists. A lot of stuff from Herb Trimpe. Some of these kind of Marvel superhero reprint covers that you get so often in these books. Just a fun collection, and as always, you know, happy to hear the thoughts of others, what people think of this material in here and classic Hulk in general. We are starting to see more volumes of these classic Silver Age and Bronze Age era titles being collected. So for example, Iron Man, I know that's had a third volume announced. There's a Daredevil volume 3, I believe, coming out. Cool to see more of these characters getting more omnibus volumes from this era. Definitely a good thing in my opinion, and hopefully Hulk will follow suit with a third volume as well. But thanks as always for watching. That's appreciated as always. I'll be back again soon to discuss something else.